Hello the internet, hope you're all well, thanks for stopping by. I'm continuing my look at the Top Gear Top 50 driving games of all time. This is the list of the games that they've published on their own Top Gear website, and I've decided to play through the majority of those top 50. There's some classics, there's some AAAs, there's some quirky games, and you may not agree with all of them, but just remember that in the words of Alan Partridge, these are not my words, Carol, these are the words of Top Gear magazine. Last week I looked at the number 50 entry, which was Supercars 2 on the Commodore Amiga. This week I'm looking at the number 49 entry, World Rally, an arcade game from 1993. Originally intended as a World Rally Championship game to celebrate the union between Toyota and Carlos Sainz Sr., the legendary rally driver. That's him on the cover there, but why is there a random picture of a crash helmet slapped across his face? Well, hilariously, just before the release of the arcade game, Carlos Sainz left the Toyota World Rally team and headed off in the direction of their fierce rivals Lancia, so they removed all likenesses of his image from the game. The game had 4 difficulty levels, and they were each split into 3 stages. We start here at the Rally of San Remo. The format is perfectly straightforward. You have a 60-second time limit to reach the end of each stage. If you don't, you lose a credit and you have to pay more to continue. The action is viewed from a top-down, almost isometric perspective. The action comes at you very quickly though, and despite the navigational aids in line with all rally games like you see on the screen there, it was very difficult to anticipate when to turn, when to brake. It was a very tricky game to get your head round. The very best gamers would have played the game over and over again to learn where the corners and obstructions were. And that way you'd also learn where the shortcuts were, so you could shave precious tenths of a second off your time and cross that checkpoint before the timer ran out. But even with knowledge of the track, it was still difficult to keep the car in the right direction and on all 4 wheels. It was very easy to flip it and lose precious time. And because the time limit was so strict, even on the earlier easy levels, you did whatever you could to try and shave off precious tenths of a second here and there. You tried to run it without braking, you tried to do shortcuts and end up on your backside. Across the 4 different locations you experienced a number of different surface conditions. You'd have your gravel, you'd have tarmac, you'd have snow like on screen here, you'd have dusty desert conditions, and it was also played out at different times of the day with different weather conditions. You could be in the middle of the day, you could be driving in the night, you could be in the rain, you could be in the snow. There was a lot of challenge for what was a very simplistic game. The controls were very basic and easy to pick up. You basically had an accelerator button and you had a joystick which went left or right. That was all you really needed to do to get to the end. The arcade machine itself was a fairly standard stand-up cabinet with just a joystick and a couple of buttons to control it, no steering wheel to be seen here. It was released in 1993, developed by Zigurat software and published by Gaelco, a Spanish publishing outfit, which is why they were probably quite upset when Carlos Sainz disappeared. Now this is Carlos Sainz Sr. I'm talking about, not Carlos Sainz Jr., who a lot of you might be familiar with from the Ferrari and Williams Formula 1 teams. No, this is Carlos Sainz Sr., the legendary rally driver who has won the Dakar on a number of occasions but also won the World Rally Championship twice. He was also perhaps most famous for one of his near misses when his Toyota Corolla coasted to a halt 300 metres from the finish of the World Rally GB, denying him that year's World Rally Championship. Perhaps quite understandably, his co-driver Luis Moya threw his crash helmet through the rear window of the Corolla. Yeah, I think I'd have done the same myself. This game went on to spawn a sequel, World Rally 2, and a number of very similar spin-off games such as the magnificent Mille Miglia game, where unlike this you had a choice of lots of different rally cars to choose from. Make no mistake though, despite the basic appearance of this game, it was extraordinarily challenging, and what you're seeing on screen now is the complete final level, the final stage from the final Thousand Lakes Rally, and it is a tricky swine. The game was warmly received on its release, however you could argue it was lost against some of the colossal titans of the arcade era back then. That said, it was regarded as being a successful game. It was certainly the biggest hit for the developers and the publishers at the time, and I have a lot of affection for this game. I remember pumping 10p's and 20p's into this machine in my local snooker club. I used to love this game, that and Mille Miglia. Yes, the game is 30 years old and perhaps hasn't aged as well as some games of the era. However, that said, it is still a huge amount of fun, and because of that I really think it does deserve a place in Top Gear magazine's 50 greatest driving games of all time. It was such a hoot to play, and even now playing it today, I love this game so much. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. Do consider a like, a comment and maybe even a subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.